Greetings, greetings people, Hotep. This is Sisstamama here with Tosin, who is a writer and mother. She also is a radio host on quite a few outlets, Blog Talk and, you know, some other. I'm sure she'll divulge towards at the end if you want to catch hold of her. And she's also an author's coach, which in itself is pretty unique, because I'm sure there's many budding writers out there who would like to have a go. I'm not quite sure, you know, what's the best way of approaching it. So again, Sis, tell us about your world, tell us about what you do.
Well, yeah, as you've so aptly introduced me, my name is Tosin Coker, and I am a science fiction author predominantly, but I am going into non-fiction also at the moment. I'm also a single mother of 2 children. I have sickle cell, so I'm also an advocate for sickle cell and, you know, generating awareness about it. And also, I'm a radio show host on Brent Youth Radio.
And you're on Blog Talk as well?
Yes, I'm on Blog Talk as well.
So, again, tell us about the writing process, how you got into it.
Wow. Basically, I had always loved writing. I really enjoyed it from when I was a child. But when I wrote for homework in school, teachers would actually get sick of how long my work was, and so they would really kind of tell me off and tell me, you know, your work is always too long. And so I kind of got put off for a while. But my mother always kept encouraging me, and she saw the potential I had as a writer before I was ready to see it in myself. But she always kept pushing me towards writing about sickle cell, which was the last thing I was interested in writing about at the time, because obviously that was what was giving me pain. That was, you know, like my personal little nemesis right there. And fast forward to the future, I joined MySpace, and I hated seeing an empty blog, so I started writing, thinking it was only for myself. Didn't realize that other people were going to be reading it, and then eventually people started making comments and saying, "Wow, you should write a book." And I'm thinking, "Oh my goodness!" It's one of those things where you kind of think you're singing and dancing alone, and then realize everybody's watching. So for a while, I actually thought, "Oh, I don't know if I want to continue writing." But then that desire was so strong, you can't just stop just because somebody else is watching. You just do it anyway. So I continued. And then a friend of mine, she sent me a text and said, "You know, you're always talking about your writing. You've developed such a passion all over again. So your mission, should you choose to accept, is to write a 2,000-word short feel-good story that must include a Black Panther, mayonnaise, a photograph, and a waterfall. And you've got 7 days to do this." So I thought, okay, sounds good. And, you know, when you put a challenge in front of me, then I have to rise to it. So about 5 days later, I still hadn't written anything. I was just thinking, pondering, how's this going to go, how's this going to go. By day 6, that's when I started writing. By day 7, she sent me another text saying, "You need to stop whatever you're doing right now. I don't care how much you've written, just send it to me." And I contacted her back, and I said, "Well, actually, I couldn't do what you said. I've actually done 6,000 words instead, and I think it's going to be a book. I'm on chapter 6. And it just flowed from there. That's how it started out.
Chapter 6, you know, people, from starting from a blog, being encouraged by people linking into the energy that Tosin is putting out there. Give thanks. Give thanks for anything.
Properly give thanks all the time, all the time.
So from the 6,000 words, 6 chapters in, how did you get your first book off the ground?
Once I'd finished, everyone was kind of excited for me, and they were like, "You know, you should put this book out." But for me, it was just a personal achievement, and I wasn't really interested in doing anything more with it than just leaving it on my shelf. I was just happy just to see it in book form, because I used Lulu just to get a printed form of the manuscript. Didn't have any page numbers, anything. But that did me proud. I was happy to see it. But other people kept on saying, "You know, you need to do something more with this," you know, until eventually a friend came up to me and said, "You know what, you're selfish if you don't put it out." And I was like, "Whoa, okay." So from there, I started researching. I really believe the universe talks to you. I really, really do. And, you know, we have a duty to listen. So I did start looking around for mainstream publishers, but my whole inner being and the universe seemed to be telling me, do self-publishing. So even a book I was reading at the time, I was looking at it and thinking, okay, who's published this woman's book? And when I started scratching the surface, I found that she was self-published and she'd set herself up as a publisher. So I was thinking, oh, so how does one go around doing that? And then I found it was as easy as purchasing a block of 10 ISBNs, and that's where the journey started.
So for those who don't know your works, you've already told us you're a science fiction writer, but it's a bit more to it than that. So tell us the premise of the book.
Okay, the first book, The Mouth of Babes, is about a young girl, very boisterous, about 10 years old at the beginning of the story, and she is the daughter of divorced parents. For no apparent reason, after complaining about having a sore throat, within about 4 hours she ends up in a coma. Nobody can figure out why. She's totally healthy, everything's fine with her. But what nobody realizes is that her late grandmother has instigated the coma in order to bring her back to the spiritual realm and start breaking down some divine truths to her, divine realities, and try to remind her of who she truly is in order so that she can fulfill the mission that she had incarnated as a human being in order to perform.
And what was the name of that book again?
That's The Mouth of Babes.
I hope you hear that, people. You need to run out, purchase. Everybody knows what I'm about, promoting our own Out of the Mouth of Babes. So from there, I mean, just the synopsis you give me there alone is looking, ooh, interesting,
Well, I mean, it was like kind of like a process of my higher self talking to my lower self. That's what I really do when I write. I believe that, when I write, it's like a form of soul writing. My soul takes over, and then the information just comes forth. And sometimes I'm there thinking, okay, well now I want to ask my soul this question. And so it was a wonderful outlet to be able to do that in the form of a child talking to her higher self, effectively, or someone who knew her previous higher self personally. And so I did it in that way, and it was easier to do that way because what I find is that when you're trying to teach something or even learn something, sometimes your ego steps in the way. So by putting it in the form of a child, it automatically disarmed the ego because the ego is not threatened by a child. And so a lot of information was able to come through on that. So I cover everything from autism to fear, to what real love is, and how fear manifests and basically prevents us from raising to our own divinity.
So sepsis, ooh, child. Now, we've stepped on so many things there. This is only part one of many interviews, many connections me and Tosin is going to make up in their trust on that. Now, you mentioned that you have another 2 books out. So tell us about the next book.
Well, The Mouth of Babes was the first in a trilogy. I didn't actually realize it was going to be a trilogy because, of course, I didn't even think I could write 1 book, let alone 3. So the first book is the first in the trilogy. The second book is Let's Sleep in God's Lie, which is a continuation of the story whereby she has now woken up, the young girl, whose name is Teeny. She's now woken up to her true self. She remembers who she is, which now means she has to continue forward in a manner of a god, really and truly, except for her parents. If you can imagine now raising a teenager who literally is a know-it-all, and, teenagers sometimes think they know it all, but this one actually does, and furthermore, if she so much as loses her temper, she could kill them just by looking at them, So it's a test of wills between each of the family members, her mother, her father, and herself. So, in essence, they all travel on a journey towards their own godship in their own manner. So she's like a divine goddess of biblical proportions and even more, but they as mortals have to find their own godliness within themselves and have it brought forth in order to manage her, and keep up.
Ooh, boy, may I try and keep up here now?
So people. The final book is Heaven's War, the Gods Awakened. And in that one, now she's really come to fulfill what it is she came to do. And what she came to do ultimately is to judge the planet and all human beings. So it was a 2-fold kind of mission that she had, which was to awaken those indigo and crystal children who were supposed to herald in the evolution of the planet. And at the same time, if people didn't fix up, then she had